Hello, and welcome to a new episode of From the Honeycomb podcast. I am your host, Katerina. Each week, we dive into a blend of topics that resonate with the soul. Whether you're an architect enthusiast, have a passion for Wanderlust, want to discover holistic approaches to rejuvenate your body and mind, or are intrigued to learn about Vastu Shastra with a modern approach, you've come to the right place. Join me as I sit down with inspiring, like-minded women from various walks of life. We will delve into their journeys to discuss the challenges and moments that define their paths. So sit back, relax, and let the spark of positive energy ignite your curiosity. Hi, it's me, Katerina. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to share with you something that can change the trajectory of your life. If you are ready to start your own architecture firm but are feeling overwhelmed by where to begin, I understand, because I felt the same way when I first embarked on my entrepreneurial journey. This is why I have created the ebook, The Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm. This comprehensive workbook contains everything I wish I had known before starting my own firm. From building a solid business plan to creating your brand, The Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm offers a step-by-step guide tailored to your timeline, whether you're launching your firm today, next month, or in a few years. Dive into essential topics like financial planning, organization strategies, and how to secure your first client, all in one convenient resource. That's right, you don't have to spend hours researching. I have done that for you so you can focus on building your business. And that's not all. With your purchase, you'll also receive an exclusive meditation for business owners, mindfulness tips, a crystal guide for support, and gratitude exercises to help you stay focused and positive throughout your journey. Turn your dream of having your own firm into a reality with the Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm. Click on the link in the show notes to get your copy today. Now, let's dive into the episode. I am joined by Liz Sydnor, licensed architect and founder of Sydnor Design, a multidisciplinary design studio in Phoenix, Arizona. Her firm is dedicated to creating a compelling visual identity that resonates with her clients' target audience. Liz, welcome to From the Honeycomb.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm super excited.
And as you know, we begin every episode by sharing something that we are grateful for in the present moment. So what are you grateful for?
I am thankful or grateful for my health today and for living another day. So that's what I would say.
That's a huge part of it. Definitely grateful for every day. And I think sometimes we forget, just being grateful that we get to be here another day and experience life. I think that's really true. So Liz, share with us a little bit of your story. So you're a licensed architect, and we'll get to your company now, but what inspired you to become an architect, and what was that journey like for you?
Sure. So I started out this journey. I actually grew up with a family of architects. So
Wow.
my dad practiced architecture for a very long time. My grandfather was an architect. My brother went to architecture school and pivoted to the construction industry. So it was something that I was surrounded with really for my life, my childhood. And I was really drawn to arts and architecture. And so I think it really started with my family.
Well, that's nice. It's interesting to hear certain people know a lot of architects growing up. And then for me, I didn't know one architect growing up. So it's interesting to hear that you were surrounded by them and you were exposed to the profession so early on.
Yes, totally. And I love hearing other people's stories because I know mine is a bit unique in that way. And, from a very privileged point of view, too, that I just had that exposure. So, I always find other people's stories and how they, discovered architecture really interesting.
Oh, good, good. And so where did you go to architecture school?
Yeah, so I went to Arizona State University for undergrad. I was there for 4 years, and then I went to University of Texas at Austin in Austin, Texas for 3 years to get my master's.
Oh, good for you. How long is the program at ASU?
So ASU, that was 4 years total. And, looking at programs for getting your master's, I know there's, 2 years is kind of the average. And at UT Austin, it was kind of choose your own adventure, which I loved. But I wanted to study abroad and do some other things. So that extended to 3 more additional years. which was fine. I loved it. So
Oh, good. Good. Okay, good. Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, because that's, yeah, 7 years. That's amazing, but to get your master's as well. And then what did it look like when you transitioned from academia into the working field? And when did you start kind of studying for your exams?
yeah, so right after school, I had a professor, a studio professor that we really hit it off, and he had his own firm in Austin that focused on custom single family residential work. And I really just loved the work that they did, and the feelings were mutual as far as like, hey, can you come work for us? And I was super excited to do that. So I did that for 7 years outside of school at the same firm. And then I want to say, I think it was during 2020, during COVID, when I started studying for my exams. And that took me a while. I think it took me a total of 3 years to complete all of them. It was not a, a great time in my life,
Yep, same, same, same.
as I've seen with your content too.
Yes.
So I can definitely relate to that. But yeah, eventually got my license. So that was a big achievement for sure.
No, it is. It's a huge achievement. I think so many people don't realize, but thankfully you have the family who understands it, which I think a lot of us don't have the understanding of. Like, you have a family of architects. And so did you, while you were studying for your exams, did you lean on family members? Like, was there anyone in the vicinity of getting their license with like you, or was it different generations getting licenses at different times?
It was kind of different generations. My sister in law, I think, got licensed relatively soon before I did. And so that's funny too. My brother also married an architect. So it's this curse that encompasses our family, but a great curse.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think during that time, I did lean on them for support at first. I had this lofty goal of like, I'm not going to tell anyone that I'm studying. I'm not going to tell
Mhm.
my family and friends just because, I didn't want to have to explain a process if I failed an exam or all of that came with it. So, but I think at a moment I was like, no, it's better to just, get that support. And so I definitely remember a lot of phone calls and just, getting some of that cheerleader energy throughout it.
No, absolutely. The support you need through the exams is so important, and especially not only with family and friends, but at work as well. I think it's just, yeah. So if you struggle with the Aries, yeah, I know so many people. So you know my journey. It's been a lot. It's definitely the Aries are a lot. But so you became a licensed architect. You worked under your own license for a little bit, and then share with us kind of when you made the transition to having your own design firm.
Yeah, so I transitioned, let's see, October of last year. So
Okay.
October 2023. That's when I launched my business. And I really thought of just trying something different other than architecture. Really, I experienced that big word that you hear of burnout.
Mm-hmm.
Just my overall health, my mental health, my physical health was kind of at an all time low. And my body was telling me I needed to take care of myself and just
Mm-hmm.
recover in some ways. And so I was really gravitated to other design industries like graphic design, branding, exhibit design, interior design. And I thought, this is a perfect opportunity to kind of take some time for myself and reflect and ask myself what I really want moving forward, at least in this moment in time. And so that's how my firm was really born, was with that question in mind.
Nice. And so then what does your company do for architects?
Yeah, so I partner a lot with architects, with fellow designers. So I offer social media management services, which has been really fun. I
Yeah.
love kind of the experimental part of it, of creating, with graphics and seeing what they want to share with the world, how we can best do that, and kind of see what sticks. And it's been really fun working with other architects and creatives in that way. So, social media management, graphic design support. So, if firms need help with proposals, if they need help with design award submissions, and just general support. I did a warranty document for a builder recently and kind of a homeowner's manual. So, yeah, really just a bunch of services, graphic design, social media management. I'm hopefully going to start working with an architecture firm partnering with interior design work as well. So, it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and that's good. And I think that's important because as a fellow entrepreneur, I would like to talk to you about, I think it's really important diversifying your income and also who you work with and what kind of work you do. So I think you're going in the right direction of having multiple streams of income, not by like just with the different like industries that you want to work with. I think that'll be really beneficial for you in the long run.
Yeah, I sure hope so. And, that's something I've spent a lot of time too, is thinking about how to diversify income, like you say, and try to think of ways to make passive income, not necessarily waiting on clients to come to you or kind of going after that work. So I've started playing around with some ideas like some digital products, even having like pre-made brands for small
Mhm.
businesses where, if you don't have the time or the energy or the funds to have a complete custom branding package done, you could have an instant download where I kind of adjust the logo to your company name, the slogan, and then have maybe a max of, say, 5 downloads for that. So it's not a completely
Mhm.
custom design, but customizable enough that, it's a much more affordable option.
Mhm.
So that's something I've just been noodling a little bit and thinking about.
Good, good. No, I think that's really important. And I've started to dabble in like that passive income and with my ebook. And I think it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
keeping your business diversified is really important. And one of the things I want to talk about as well is how are you enjoying entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's say I have most days I love it. And then some days I'm thinking, "Oh my god, what did I get myself into?"
Yep.
But no, it's been really, really fun. I think that's the best way to describe it is just it's fun to like have that freedom to
Hmm.
experiment with things. You're not so locked into kind of your typical day or the typical
Hmm.
projects that you'll be working on, like if you were at an architecture firm. So I just really like that aspect of it of, that freedom to experiment and just to try different things. So yeah, I would say I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, good, good. I can tell, like, just by, like, how you, like, started to glow and when you responded is, like, entrepreneurship is such a right fit for some people, and, like, I feel like you and I kind of have that in common where it makes sense, and like you said, the freedom of time, and it's I mean, I feel like I have less time to do things because I have more things on my plate
Right.
with, like, the
Yep.
company, but it's the freedom to be able to choose when and where I wanna work, how much I wanna work, right? Which I think that's where that freedom comes in and it feels I resonate with you. I love it as well.
Yeah, I know. It's nice because some days, if you want to have an intense day and just get a lot done, you can, but also you have the total freedom to just say, hey, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go enjoy myself and see my family or
Mhm.
do whatever. So, yeah, that's been a really big perk for sure.
And so how have you kind of figured out a schedule that works for you? Like kind of what's that been like transitioning into working for yourself?
It's funny, I've always been a night owl. I
Mhm.
like staying up late and I feel like a lot of my best ideas come late at night. And so I've had this kind of acceptance with myself because I feel like society values really early morning risers and like,
Mhm.
and I think you are too. I
I'm
remember.
an early riser, yeah.
Yeah. And so, that works for you, but that has
Mhm.
just never worked for me. And so, what I like to do is I'll stay up, pretty late. But then when I wake up, I actually like to start my day with just doing something I enjoy. I think for a long time, I had this mentality that I had to like my fun time or,
Mhm.
just time for pleasure. And so I'll either write like in the morning or, start a new recipe or just something to kind of ease into the day. And that kind of gets my creative juices flowing. Like I just feel like a happier person, kind of
Mhm.
almost flipping my day than what I did before, where I'd work, a typical day of, 9 to 5 and then kind of earn my free time. So I
Mhm.
kind of flip flopped it recently and that's been working surprisingly well.
Mhm. That's good. That's good that you've been able to make your own schedule, and I think that's when you can also be the most productive, right? You don't have to be on that 9 to 5 clock to make sure that your boss sees that you're working,
Right,
and
right.
which is like a big part of it. And then how do you stay motivated to get things done? I want to pick your brain like as an entrepreneur too, and like we're still like in the early stages of it, right? I feel like if I talk to someone 5 years out or 10 years out, that's a different conversation, but so what have you seen and what have you seen that works for you or doesn't work for you when it comes to staying motivated? Because there's nobody there behind your back being like, "Did you get this done?
Yeah,
Did you get that done?"
right.
So, what do you do when it comes to like motivation to get things done?
Yeah, I think, recently I've really made a bigger effort to like grow my professional network here. I
Mhm.
only moved back to my hometown of Phoenix a year ago. I was in Austin after grad school for 7 years, so a total of 10 years in Austin.
Mhm.
And so after moving back here, I was kind of getting adjusted to just being back in the city and starting my company, but now I've really made an effort to meet other women specifically who've started their own businesses. And I think, when you have that support and just can talk through your ideas and or problems that you need help solving, it's just been really really motivating for me personally. And so even in the past month or two, I've definitely felt like a surge like come in of like, okay, I can do this, because entrepreneurship, it can feel up and down a little bit if you're not getting those clients that you have been reaching for, or you can kind of get in a slump too of is this really working? Is this worth it? At least I've asked those questions myself. So I think really meeting others who are going through the same thing, that's what keeps me like really motivated.
No, absolutely. The networking aspect of it, that is something that anyone working for someone else doesn't like. You can still network when you work your 9 to 5 with someone else, but the networking is a totally different level when it means getting a client and essentially having an income. And it definitely changes, like, it's almost the pressure of having to network, because I
Mhm.
thought going into entrepreneurship, I'm like, I am going to love networking and going to all these events.
Yeah.
That was, like, my least favorite thing, and I'm an introvert, extrovert, depends on my energy, the mood, but, like,
Mhm.
having to go out there and, like, at a point, you have to sell yourself, you have to have that elevator pitch when someone asks you, "Well, what do you do?" And that was just
Right.
really energy draining, and so but networking is a huge aspect of how to get clients.
It is. And it's like, I knew that before starting out, but until you're really in it and experiencing it,
Mhm.
it's kind of, I think pressure is the perfect word for it, is you kind of
Mhm.
have this constant pressure on yourself to, even if you do have work, it's like, well, is this always going to be the case? Do I need to keep,
Yep.
hustling to get more work? So yeah, I think that's a really important aspect of it.
No, absolutely, and so the question I always get asked, I'm gonna ask you, is how do you get clients?
Yeah, yeah, clients. Oh my gosh. So I was really lucky starting out where I had a friend of mine who was working at a local firm here and they needed help with their social media management. And we're just talking over dinner and I'm like, "Oh my god, like I've been interested in doing that." And it was for another architecture firm, and so I thought, "Oh, because I'm an architect, I think I have a lot of value there where there's not so much of a learning curve, say with, another social media manager that doesn't have that kind of background and an insight to the profession."
Mhm.
So, that worked out really well. That rolled into a brand refresh for the firm, which I
Wow.
was I was like totally surprised by,
Yeah.
but like super thrilled to do. And then that rolled into an exhibit design that I did about a month after. And honestly, just through that referral and kind of recommendation through the initial projects that I started, I was super lucky to continue that kind of train of work. And so that happened for a while. And then when there was a bit of a lull, really it was the networking events that I was attending that I thankfully got some prospective clients. One event was, I don't know if you know the No Women organization. It's a national group, but they focus on women who are entrepreneurs. And so I attended an event a couple of weeks ago and got a great lead from that.
Nice.
And similar stories like that where I've attended events, just, not necessarily even for the, I guess, goal of getting
Mhm.
work. It was just to kind of get myself out there. And yeah, I mean, that turned into a potential client. So yeah.
Yeah, congratulations. I get it. When you get that potential client, it's like you have the little, like, yeah, like dance, like, I don't know, like, you may not have a dance, but like it's exciting, like when you get that call and then you're like, oh, it's amazing that effort I put into that social event. Maybe I didn't want to go, but I think for me, now that I've looked at social events, I find it successful if I talk to at least one person and give them my
Yeah.
business card. Because there's been moments where I'm like, I don't have the energy for this today. And it's like I've got deadlines, because when you're at these networking events, there's no one back at the office doing the work unless, I don't know. Do you have someone working for you?
No, no, it's just me. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. So
I feel that.
it is. Once, like, sometimes work starts to pile up, it's, kind of figuring out that balance of, okay, do I keep going to these events? Because like you said, you may have a lull, but when it's busy, should you kind of put the networking events on a back burner? And sometimes you should, sometimes you shouldn't. I think it definitely
Mhm.
depends, but that's a huge aspect of networking and being a business owner. One thing I want to touch on, which you brought up, which is really interesting, and I think is why you're so valuable to other architects, is you mentioned because you have an architecture background, you already have an in when you're working with other architects or interior designers. You know the industry, you know the word, the
Mhm.
words and the process and everything. So I think that is such a valuable part to you and to working with you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's really nice. And I think when you kind of already speak that language a little bit, yeah, there's just a lot more creative work that comes from it. And I really enjoy learning other designers' processes and just the way they think, the way they run their firms, seeing what their leadership is like. I feel like I get to learn so much, working with other creatives. And so that's been really fulfilling for me.
No, I can imagine. And so have you kept your architecture license then as you've moved to Arizona?
Yeah, so I'm licensed in Texas.
Okay.
I've thought about getting my reciprocity here,
Hmm.
but so I have this dilemma where I'm like, okay, I think I want to do architectural work in the future,
Hmm.
maybe in a year or two, but I kind of can't decide if I should do that now or if I should wait. But that's something I do still have is my license, and I keep that active in Texas.
Good, good, good. Because I think, yeah, it's the opportunity if anything ever comes up in the future, and I think it's great that you're thinking about it as well. And I was just wondering if you'd ever think about going back into architecture, or are you, really happy with kind of the design work that you do now?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's really both. Like I'm very happy with where I am now and the projects that I've been working on. I've absolutely loved, but there's a part of me that does miss architecture. I miss the complexity of it and really, working with a space,
Mm.
in the real world. And so I do miss that. And I think eventually I will want to take on architectural projects again, but I think the timing is kind of TBD.
Mhm. No, makes sense, makes sense. And so can you walk us through the process of when you work with an architecture company? And like rebranding to me is really fascinating because I feel like it's a little scary to rebrand because, it's just like I've kind of been starting to think a lot about where this podcast is going and possibly,
Yeah.
what that looks like. And I'm starting to have that little conversation inside my head. So, can you walk us through, what it's like working with you and like for rebranding or for wood graphic design, whatever service you'd like to talk about, but what is that process like?
Yeah, yeah. So I think, especially with a rebrand, there's a lot more thing to consider because you're working with an existing brand. It's, just like a
Mhm.
remodel project, of a home. Sometimes those are the harder projects because you're working with existing conditions and what's already there than just a clean slate.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of my time is really just getting to know and learn what their vision is, what their brand voice is or has been. So we spent a lot of time. I looked at every logo variation they had, all their color palettes. And it was almost like taking really an assessment of all the existing elements that they had. So we collected the business cards, the agenda, meeting minute template. We
Mhm.
collected the title blocks. We collected, all the different elements from their website, from Facebook. And I put it all in one document, big PDF, just to say, like, this is what we have now. This is a snapshot.
Mhm.
And so let's really take a look and see what we want to keep, what's worth keeping, and then what we want to change. And why do you want to change if, they want to do that? So it's a very collaborative process, which I really enjoyed. And, after we kind of took that assessment, I would kind of go to the drawing board, see what other really design opportunities there were. So we ended up revising an existing logo that they had, as well as creating a new submark for them. So something they can use on social media for like their profile photo and something a bit smaller that could work in different applications. So I would say it was a very subtle refresh. We adjusted some colors that they had and implemented that into social media. So I contributed definitely with design, but I was more of a kind of facilitator and like bringing a space to them and the time to them to like really reflect and see what they want to do moving forward. So yeah, it was a very fun project and a great learning experience for sure. And so I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, it does, it does, and I like that you ask, like, "Why are you rebranding?" Because that's, like, the biggest component, like, what is your change? And, like, I know first thing that comes to mind for me is, like, Instagram, right? I mean, that's how
Yeah.
we've also connected is but,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Instagram rebranded its, like, logo, and it's always interesting to me how even, like, the big companies, like, when they find the time it is to rebrand is like, have
Mhm.
you noticed a pattern with companies of when they decide to rebrand?
I haven't done enough of those projects to really get some like historic data on that, but I know with this firm that I worked with, they hadn't really looked at it for 10 years. They were looking
Hmm.
or they were using their previous kind of branding elements for, a decade. And so in some ways there's some pressure because it's like, okay, here I am coming in, to this brand that has been working, relatively well for them. But it's also great because, they do get kind of that third party perspective and someone who hasn't been living in that brand for 10 years.
Mhm.
And so, yeah.
I think a lot of people would be attached to their brand too.
Mhm.
So it's great that you said it's like a third party perspective on it too. Someone who isn't, like you said, has been part of the brand, but isn't emotionally invested and personally invested in it too. Because then you get to come with it and with like a new, fresh eyes. So that really, I think that's a huge benefit. And then, like I said, back to bringing that value that you have that architecture background. And it sounds like you have really been able to kind of use that architecture background to be able to rebrand architecture companies then.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think too, my mindset going into it is like I said, I'm more of a facilitator.
Mhm.
I don't go into it thinking, oh, we're gonna completely redo,
Mhm.
everything just to do it. I think it's really important to, take time to reflect, why are you doing this rebrand? What's important to you? And what do you ultimately want to say, moving forward and having longevity in that brand. So I think, yeah, it's a very careful, thoughtful process for sure.
And that makes me think, like, how long does it usually take to rebrand? Like, to get from the design I know it varies. It's like asking how long does a remodel take, right?
Yeah.
I totally get that. But, like, typically, like, when you're thinking about coming in and you don't have to be, like, specific, like, because of course it varies per how big the company is, how many I think probably clients or, decision makers you have on that team. I'm sure that
Yes.
also adjusts it. Right, completely get
Yeah.
that. But like, how long does that process of rebranding usually take? Is it also a lot of iterations? Like, or I guess that's also specific, but I'll let you answer.
Yeah, yeah. I think, it's pretty vast as far as like the range. I mean, I would say a minimum of a month, 4 weeks to really,
Mhm.
like you said, if there aren't that many people involved needing approvals or, giving that input. So I'd say at least a month, but it could go, I think the total process took us maybe 3 months in total. And
What?
also they weren't in a rush,
Mhm.
they wanted to take their time. And so, that took a longer amount of time. Did that answer your question as far as
It
how
did. You
long?
did. Yes, it did.
Yeah.
You're good. You're good. And I'm already starting to think about more questions, just like because you're like the first like design company, especially specific for architects and rebranding that I've had on. So I have all these questions too. Is just like, but then I also want to talk to you about entrepreneurship. So like in my head, I'm having this like duel of
Yeah, yeah.
my questions I want to ask you. But kind of going back to entrepreneurship because it kind of comes back to the clients as well. Is one interesting thing, and I know I was asked this too, is like coming up with a fee structure and you don't have to share your fees, but like how did you come up with your fee structure and like how are you navigating that? Because that's something that I think will always be ever evolving in a business. So what
Mhm.
was your approach when it came to creating your fee structures?
Yeah, so I did a lot of Googling. I did a lot of research
Yeah.
on actually TikTok for social media management on TikTok. That was very helpful because
Nice.
people were really transparent with, for their packages, what they charge, how long they've been in the business. And so a lot of social media actually educated me on that. And then I kind of reflected on, okay, if, this person with this amount of experience and background is charging this, I am a licensed architect and I actually considered my fee as an architect too. And like,
Hmm.
where do I kind of find that middle ground of, okay, I'm kind of new in this field or, field of graphic design and exhibit design. But since I do have, 10 years of experience as an architect, how does that factor in? And so, yeah, I took a long time kind of noodling over that and
No,
seeing,
yeah.
yeah. how that all comes together.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I Googled as well. I mean, yeah, that's because not everybody is transparent with their fees, and it's like trying to figure that out. That was just kind of an interesting. I just wanted like a little behind the scenes on that because I think it goes back to like the value you have as an architect. And also that does affect your rate because you have the architecture degree, you have a master's in architecture as well, which is just another level. You have the license. So of course that is going to be put into your fee because it's the value that you bring. I mean, like an architecture company could hire another, design consultant and to, rebrand and or to do their social media management and have to explain to them, how does architecture work? So I think you really bring that value home for them.
Yeah. And it's been tough, because when you're starting out, you want to be accessible,
Mhm.
with your fees and, to secure that work. But at the same time, like you kind of have to set your fee and stick to it, which has been hard, because I've heard, oh, you are too expensive or, which is going to happen for sure. And so you kind of have to stick to your guns a little bit as far
Mhm.
as, okay, I've set this, and I do believe in this value. So I want to find clients that identify with that and recognize that as well.
That's an important mindset to have as a business owner because, like you, I've also been questioned on my hours. And it's like, or
Mhm.
not my hours, my hourly rate, because I bill out hourly. And you have to stand by that. And it's exactly like I've had client ask me if I can, reduce my fee by half. I'm like, I cannot build or design this for you for 50% less. But it happens. And it's like you have to stand your ground. And I think also because we are women and we're, younger and early on in our career fields, and especially both of us having our own firms, that moment of doubt can easily slip in to like the backs of our, minds and start kind of like being like, yeah, maybe it was too high. No, it's too low, too high. Like there's that little internal dialogue having that little argument. But I think you said it perfectly. Like you have to stick to your guns.
And I think it was on Instagram, I saw a quote that said, you're not charging for that hour, you're charging for the 10 years experience that you have, the education that you have. And so sometimes it's hard because, how do you sum all that up into an hourly fee? And I think it's so hard to do, to quantify something like that. So yeah, it's a learning process too.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Liz, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on From the Honeycomb, sharing about your business, the inside of the entrepreneurship, but also what your firm does. I have really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. I have too. And thank you so much for inviting me. I'm honored to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. And where can listeners find you?
Listeners can find me. My website is sydnor-design.com. And also I'm active on my Instagram, which is Sydnor Design, one word.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'll provide a link in the show notes. Liz, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of From the Honeycomb podcast. As we conclude, I want to express my gratitude for joining me in today's episode. I hope you have found it insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to rate, review, and click that like button so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to share this with your friends. You can follow me on Instagram at From the Honeycomb Podcast, and you can also further your support of From the Honeycomb by visiting the Patreon link provided in the show notes. Your contribution helps make more episodes possible. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe to my monthly newsletter, A Spark of Positive Energy, that comes out on the 7th of each month. Thank you so much, and see you next Friday.